They called her a monster, a nymphomaniac, a tyrant who murdered her own husband. For 2 centuries, that was the story. But here is the truth. She was born a nobody, a minor German princess from a town most Europeans had never heard of. She arrived in Russia at 15, married a man who despised her, and spent 18 years in a court that wanted her gone. And then, in a single night, she took the throne. Her name was Catherine. And this is the story they don't want you to remember. Sophie Friederike Auguste was born on May 2nd, 1729, in Stettin, a provincial town in Prussian Pomerania that no one at Versailles could find on a map. Her father was a minor German prince, Christian August of Anhalt-Zerbst, loyal, decent, and entirely forgettable. Her mother, Johanna, was ambitious and cold, a woman who saw her daughter not as a child to love, but as a piece to move across a board. Sophie was small, sickly, and plain. A spinal brace straightened her back as a child. No one at any European court would have predicted what she would become. But Sophie had one weapon that no one noticed. She was ferociously intelligent. She read everything she could find. Tacitus, Plutarch, Montesquieu, Voltaire. While other girls her age learned embroidery, Sophie was studying how empires were built and how they fell. In 1744, a letter arrived that changed everything. Empress Elizabeth of Russia had chosen Sophie, at just 15, to marry her nephew, the future Tsar Peter. It was a political arrangement, nothing more. Sophie was disposable. She traveled to Moscow in the dead of winter, converted to Russian Orthodoxy, and took the name Ekaterina, Catherine. She learned Russian fluently while her future husband refused to try. She fasted, prayed, and charmed the court, while Peter played with toy soldiers and drilled his servants like a child playing war. Their marriage in 1745 was loveless from the first night. Peter was immature, possibly impotent, and openly contemptuous of his wife. He paraded his mistress through the court while Catherine sat in silence. But she was not idle. She was learning. Every alliance, every grudge, every crack in the palace walls. She memorized them all. She read Voltaire by candlelight, cultivated friendships with generals and diplomats, and waited. For 18 years, she waited. By 1762, Peter III had been Tsar for just 6 months, and he had already made enemies of everyone who mattered. He pulled Russia out of the 7 Years' War, humiliating the army. He insulted the Orthodox Church. He openly threatened to divorce Catherine and lock her in a convent. Catherine saw her moment. On the morning of July 9th, 1762, she rode to the Ismailovsky Guards barracks wearing a borrowed officer's uniform. The soldiers knelt. Then the Semyonovsky Guards joined. Then the Preobrazhensky Regiment. By noon, the entire Imperial Guard had sworn loyalty, not to the Tsar, but to her. Peter, trapped at Oranienbaum, abdicated without a fight. 8 days later, he was dead. The official cause, hemorrhoidal colic. No one believed it. Catherine never explained. She never apologized. She simply ruled. And rule she did for 34 years. Longer than any other woman in Russian history. She corresponded with Voltaire, who called her the Star of the North. She invited Diderot to St. Petersburg and spent hours debating philosophy with him. She drafted a new legal code, the Nakaz, based on Enlightenment principles. It was so radical that it was banned in France. She founded the Hermitage, turning the Winter Palace into one of the greatest art collections on Earth. She built hospitals, reformed education, and opened the first state-funded school for women in European history. But Catherine was no idealist. She was a pragmatist with an empire to grow. She fought 2 wars against the Ottoman Empire and won both. In 1783, she annexed Crimea, securing Russia's access to the Black Sea for the first time. She partitioned Poland 3 times, erasing it from the map of Europe entirely. Her general and former lover, Grigory Potemkin, became the architect of her southern empire. Together, they transformed Russia from a northern kingdom into a global power. But power always comes at a cost. In 1773, a Cossack rebel named Pugachev declared himself the miraculously survived Peter III and led the largest peasant uprising in Russian history. For 2 years, his rebellion tore through the Volga region, burning estates, killing nobles, threatening to reach Moscow itself. Catherine crushed it. Pugachev was brought to Moscow in an iron cage and executed. But the rebellion changed her. The enlightened reformer grew cautious. The woman who once quoted Voltaire now tightened serfdom and silenced dissent. And her enemies seized on something else entirely. They invented grotesque stories, each more obscene than the last, designed not to critique her policies but to humiliate a woman who dared to hold absolute power. For 2 centuries, those lies would be repeated as fact. On November 17, 1796, Catherine collapsed in her private chambers after suffering a massive stroke. She never regained consciousness. She was 67 years old. Her son, Paul, who had always despised her, immediately began dismantling everything she had built. He reversed her policies, exhumed Peter III's body, and crowned the corpse beside her coffin in one final, grotesque act of revenge. But Catherine's Russia could not be undone. She built more than 200 cities. She doubled the borders of the empire. She turned Russia into a European power that it had never been before. And yet, for centuries, the world chose to remember the lies instead of the legacy, because a woman with that much power was something history could not forgive. They called her Catherine the Great. She earned every letter of it.